Good morning. I am Ashley Wallace from the Tallest Tulip. I own the Tallest Tulip, and we are a wedding and event floral design studio. But we love putting on these flower workshops, and we've done workshops for the Texwood Home and Garden Show here for the last couple of years, normally in person, but this year we're trying something new, and we are going to be doing this virtually. So I'm so glad that you're here. What we're going to learn today is how to create a centerpiece or a floral arrangement that can go on a kitchen island or can be given as a gift to somebody using a bunch of flowers that you would buy from the grocery store. So, you know, you go to Kroger, H-E-B, Sam's, Costco, and they have these pre-bundled bouquets of flowers, 25, 30 bucks. And most people will take these home and just stick them in a vase of water, and everything kind of flops to the side and doesn't look very arranged. It's not nearly as beautiful as it could be. So I'm going to show you how to turn this into something really pretty that looks like it was done by a professional florist. So Charlie, if he has the supply list, he's going to pop onto the screen here for us.
Give me just a moment, I'll have that right up.
No problem, no problem. There's just a couple of things that you need to pull this off. So the first thing is a container. I like to use containers that are not clear glass, because clear glass, a lot of times you see the stems and it's all messy and the water can get gunky. So if you use a white vase or something that's colored that you can't see through, that's the best way to go. And when you're picking the size of the container that you want to use, the rule in floral design is that the container is going to be about 1/3 the size of the overall design. So if I have a vase that's, I think this is 4.5 inches tall, my flowers are going to come up to about right here. So think if you have a tall vase, your flowers are going to be really tall. So it's better to err on the side of shorter rather than taller. Here's our supply list. Clippers. You can also use kitchen scissors. Most people have those ready to go at their house. And then for today's arrangement, we're going to use wet floral foam. So it's important to pay attention when you're buying your foam, and not buy the dry foam. Dry foam is used for silk flower arrangements, and it doesn't soak up water. So when you go to Hobby Lobby or Michael's, you can order this on Amazon. The brand is Oasis. You want to make sure it's the wet flower foam. And I'm going to show you how to treat this so that it soaks up water and provide a water source for your flowers. And then you need flowers, and that's really it. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pre-trim our foam. So I'm going to hold this up to my container and give it a cut. I'm just using a kitchen knife to cut it. And it cuts really easily. And this is meant to be shaped and molded in order to fit your vessels. So don't be scared to cut it. So you will need to have a water source to soak your foam. So you can go and put the stopper in your kitchen sink and fill your kitchen sink up with water. You can fill a bucket with water. We just want to make sure that we have enough water for this foam to be submerged fully. So I'm going to drop this foam in the water, and I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to push it down, because when you do that, there will be dry pockets in the middle of your foam. And so when you stick the stem in, it's not going to have a water source, so it'll dry out. So I'm just going to drop this in here and wait for it to sink. And you can see it when it gets to the top. You can see the water filling in on the top. And when it's all saturated, I'll pull it out. It's like watching a pot boil. Almost done. Okay, there we go. So you can see I didn't push it, I let it sink, and the whole thing is saturated with water. So I have a little tray here I'm going to put it on so I don't get water all over the table. You can pull out like a cookie sheet or something like that and put your foam on it in order to cut it a little bit more. This piece is still a little big, so I'm just going to shave off some of the edges. And then drop it in. So now you can see I've got my foam in the container. And the purpose of working with foam as opposed to just filling this up with water is the foam really holds the flowers in place. So when you stick the flowers in where you want them to go, they're not flopping everywhere. There's some other techniques that we use in floral design to create this same sort of structure. You can use floral tape and create a grid across the top of your arrangement. Or we use chicken wire a lot in wedding work when we're doing, 10, 20 centerpieces in large installations. This is a piece of chicken wire that I just rolled into a ball, and we would stick this down into the container. Chicken wire is used because it's a lot more environmentally friendly than using foam. Foam is not biodegradable, and it's just when you're using a ton of it, it's not friendly for the environment. So we try to use chicken wire as much as we possibly can. But in your designs, if you're just using, a third of a block and saving the block for your next couple of arrangements, it's probably the easiest way to go. The first thing you're going to do when you get your flowers home from the store is go ahead and cut your bunch open. So mine are rubber banded. I'm just going to cut them open, and I'm going to spread everything out. And I'm going to group the materials by like pieces. So I'm going to create a little pile for my greenery and separate that out. And I have a couple of different types of greenery here. Anything that comes in your bouquet that you buy is absolutely sufficient. This happens to be Italian ruscus, 2 different varieties of eucalyptus, and lemon leaf. And I also wanted to mention, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute your mic. I believe that's the right way to do it, Charlie, correct? Unmute your mic.
Actually, if they type into the chat section their name and say, I have a question, I'll go ahead and unmute them.
Perfect. So type in the chat section if you have a question, and Charlie will notify us and let you ask your question. I love answering those, so don't be shy. Okay, so I have some filler flower here. This is called wax flower. And then I have 2 different types of blooms that were in my bundle. I have a standard rose. This is called pink mondial. And then I have some carnations, some 2-toned carnations that we're gonna use. So when you're picking out flowers, when you're selecting a bouquet, it's important to grab something that has different size blooms, different textures. When you have different shapes and sizes and textures, it creates a lot of interest in your arrangement as opposed to it being all one type of flower. If it's all one type of flower, we're fairly limited in how we can put it together. So, okay, we're gonna start with our greenery. First, we're going to add some greenery to create the base layer of our design. Once we start putting flowers in it, it can be hard to really get that greenery down into the arrangement. So we'll start by putting a little bit of greenery in first. So I'm gonna find my largest leaf, which is my lemon leaf, and I'm gonna trim the stem at an angle. It's really important when you're cutting anything, greenery, flowers, filler flower, to trim it at an angle because it exposes the most surface area of the stem to the water source. And we want these to be able to drink as much water as possible. So after I trim it, I'm going to insert it into my container at an angle so that it's coming up and out of the design. Don't want to put it in straight, and you don't want to put it in completely sideways, but if you put it kind of at a little bit of an angle so that it looks like it's growing out of the container, that's what we're going for with this type of floral arrangement. The arrangement we're going to be making is very garden style, which is a trend in floral design right now. the design will look like it's just something that was plucked out of the garden, as opposed to being, you know, symmetrically arranged around the container. So you'll just kind of spin your container around and get a good base layer of greenery. I think that's all the salal I have in my bunch. So I'm gonna pull some eucalyptus out and put a little bit of eucalyptus in. And you'll wanna rip the bottom leaves off because you need to stick your material into the foam at least an inch. Does not need to go all the way in or all the way through, but it needs to go in enough to where it's going to be stable and held into place. Okay. Keep doing that, and I think maybe 6 or 7 little stems, and you should have a really good start. So this piece, I'm gonna cut this into multiple pieces and use it as opposed to trying to stick this whole thing in here. Just gonna trim it to give me some little pieces like this and put them in. Okay, so I've got a pretty good start here with some greenery. So now I'm going to start putting in my focal flowers. So our focal flowers that we're going to use for this arrangement are these large pink mondial roses. Your focal flower will be anything that you want to be the star of the show in your arrangement. So typically it's the largest bloom or just the bloom that you want to highlight. I'm going to use these roses for that purpose, and then we have some filler flower that we'll fill in the holes with. With roses, there's some pretty cool things that you can do to get these babies to open up. These are about 50% open. They're going to continue to open up, and they will be really big. What I like to do before I put them into the arrangement is pull off the guard petals. So the guard petals, sometimes people think these are dead petals on the outside of the rose, but they're not. They're called guard petals because when these are growing, they protect the rest of the flower from bugs, from weather, from, you know, anything that can harm the flower. So when we pull these guard petals off, it triggers the rose to open. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so I've got my roses ready. I'm going to trim the first one. You want to under trim rather than over trim before your first insertion into the container. You can always make it shorter, but you cannot make it longer, and you don't want to start too short. So the thing that we're going to focus on when we're building this is we're going to create triangles of flowers. So this is going to be an asymmetrical arrangement, meaning it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical on all sides and round. We're going to have a little bit more height on one side and a little bit more density, and then the other side is going to be shorter and it'll have a little bit more air and movement. So this is first flower is going to be my longest. So I'm going to trim it about right here, and I'm going to insert it into the foam. If you look at the top and kind of think of it as 4 quadrants, I'm going to put it in the back, my left, your right quadrant at an angle. And this will be our tallest element here. Next, I'm going to put my flower on the other side, and this one's going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to go in at about the same angle, trim it again, and put him over here and push it in a little bit more. So that greenery is kind of getting in the way, but you can see that we've got more height over here, lower over here. And then my third flower will complete the triangle, and it's going to go in front. And I'm going to cut this one really short because we're going to push him in pretty far. I'm working backwards, which is interesting. So I don't like how I put that. So I'm gonna take it back out, retrim it. Anytime you wanna move something, it's absolutely safe to do. Just make sure that you give the stem a fresh trim. Okay, I wanted it to come out instead of up so that you can see how pretty this rose is. Okay. Another trick to open a rose that's really closed, you can turn the sink on very, very lightly or fill up a glass with some water, and you can pour water into the flower, and the weight of the water, it's soft enough to where it's not going to harm the petals, but it will get in all these nooks and crannies and help the rose open. You can also turn it upside down and very gently rub it like this and twirl it, and it gets everything to start opening up. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my 3, and we're gonna move on to our next flower. This is our kind of our secondary flower. It just really is going to add texture to the arrangement. It's not the star of the show, but we definitely need some more color and shape and texture going on here. So these are carnations. So my goal here is to place these in the gaps. So I'm gonna trim this first one and put it right here in between these guys. During our last workshop, Charlie asked a really good question. He said, are you pushing things in different depths? And the answer is yes. You don't want everything to be on the same plane, that it'll be really round and kind of boring and just look like a blob of flowers. When you push things in at different heights, it gives it interest and it helps your eye move through the arrangement. So the next flower I'm going to put over, I'm going to put it right here. You can look at it and just see, kind of hold the flower up and see where there's some negative space that needs some texture. So I'm going to try to push this down a little bit, okay? And then my last one, turn around, look at it. I'm going to put on my side where I have the height, I need it to be a little heavier over here. So I'm going to put it right over here in between these two. And you really just want to make sure that nothing is like super lined up or right next to each other. In a design like this, we work in odd numbers. So we're putting 3 blooms of each variety into the arrangement. Think about if we were doing 4 or if we were doing 2, it would look either like eyeballs looking at you or it would look like a square. And we want to avoid that in an asymmetrical garden arrangement like this. So I've got a pretty good start. You can see my height over here still and lower over here. So now I'm going to go through with my filler flower, which is wax flower. Oftentimes a filler that you'll use, it could be cushion palms or baby's breath or anything that kind of has more of a delicate style. A flower like this that has multiple blooms per stem is really great to use for filler. It's just going to kind of give us some airiness and some texture into the arrangement. So I'm going to trim this up. You're going to rip the leaves off at the bottom so that you don't have leaves going into your foam, and start popping this in. And this really takes practice. Your first design may look like a mess, but by the second or third, fourth time you do it, I think you'll be really impressed with how much better you get at it. So you can see I'm just sprinkling this throughout. And I turn it around to face me, so I'll turn it back around in a second. And I like to use all of this stuff. You may get to the point where you think that it's garbage if you've snipped off all the pretty blooms, but I will try to use as much of a stem as I possibly can. And it looks like we've had some new people come into the group. Welcome. If you have a question, type in the chat box that you have a question, and Charlie will unmute you. And you can ask any questions that you have. Okay. So the vase life for these flowers in foam is not as long as if it were in a vase of fresh water. But to about 75% of the life of if it were in a vase of fresh water. So not that much shorter time frame. And you can rehydrate your flowers when they're in foam. You can stick this guy under the sink and lightly let the water hit the top of the foam, and it'll soak up water again. It's just like if you were to refresh water in a vase. So that's very important. I would definitely do that every 2 days at least. And you can stick your finger in and feel if it feels dry, then it probably needs some water. And this is a very simple arrangement. I just have 3 types of flowers here. And it's a total of 6 blooms and some filler. So you don't need, you know, a dozen flowers to make something really beautiful. Okay. You can see that's kind of starting to take shape. One thing that we do whenever we're building a wedding centerpiece or a bouquet or really anything, if you take a picture of it, there's something about taking a photo of it and looking at it in a picture as opposed to looking at it here that allows you to see things that may need to be changed. I don't know why that is, but we always take pictures of our designs and we can sit there and say, ooh, that really needs a flower right there. Maybe we should move this over here. So if you're giving this to somebody, if you're making something as a gift, take a picture of it and see if you notice anything in the photograph that needs to be changed. So far, I really have just done the front. I'm gonna go ahead and my last rows, I'm gonna pop it in the back so that it doesn't look naked back here.
When you're making adjustments to your vase, what are some things that you're looking for that would need to be changed?
So something that's bothering me in this one is this greenery is really offensive right there. It's sticking out. It doesn't, it's covering up this flower here. So if you have anything that looks out of place or that looks like it's jarring out at you, you may want to move it. Pull it out, cut it shorter, put it back in. Or if you have, you know, when you're putting things in, if things end up too close together, like if these flowers were right up next to each other and you want to space them out a little bit, that can happen because sometimes you don't have know how it's going to come together until you have all of your flowers in the arrangement. So just if anything looks clumpy or like it's sticking out too much, if two of the same type of flower end up right next to each other, then you would want to pop those out and adjust. So I'm going to now move to my other greenery, and I'm just going to start filling in the negative space where you can see the foam, or where it looks just like it needs something. So this is ruscus, and this is obviously way too big to go in this vase. So I'm going to trim this short, piece there, piece here, piece here, and now I have 4 pieces of greenery out of one stem that I can use to put into the design. So this guy is really low, so I'm just gonna pull that off because that would have gotten in the way when I was putting it into the foam. And I'm gonna kind of separate the flowers and start sticking this in. And again, we want to think up and out as opposed to straight down. You can kind of see how it just has that very garden style shape, or very organic looking.
When it comes to things like the extra greenery, how far do you have to stick them in to know that they're getting a good amount of water and that they're going to be stable?
Half an inch at least. Sometimes, especially when your vessel starts to get full, there's going to be a lot of stems going all different directions in there, so you may not be able to push it as far as when you first got started. As long as it doesn't, the foam will hold it. It really will. So as long as it doesn't fall over or fall out, or feel loose when you shake it, like I'm really giving this a good shake and nothing's moving, then you should be safe. So my foam, you can see down here. I don't like that. So we're getting somewhere. And make sure that when you're buying a bundle of flowers from the store, that you have greenery in the bundle. I know my HEB, I'm here in Sienna Plantation, our HEB will sell separate bundles of greenery that you can buy, which is great, for I think like $10 for 10 stems of greenery that includes eucalyptus and a lot of the more popular greens that we're using in more modern flower design. So here we go. We're getting there. I have this baby blue eucalyptus, which is one of my favorite greens to use. It has a lot of text. It's just interesting. It's a really pretty color. It's kind of a gray blue, and it'll give it a pop. So I'm going to use this in the same line as my higher tall rose to give me more emphasis where that asymmetry is. You want everything to look like it's growing up and out.
I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please type them into the Zoom chat box, and we'll be sure to unmute you so you can ask your questions.
And also, we are doing a giveaway. We have a floral toolkit, which comes with our signature vase, which is this white vase. This is our favorite vase to use for everyday floral arrangement. It comes with a pair of clippers, comes with some chicken wire, comes with some floral foam, waterproof tape, everything that you would need to make something at home. So if you will put your email address in the chat box, we're going to draw a winner to receive our Tallest Tulip Floral Toolkit. Okay. I'm going to pull this down a little bit because it was covering up my carnation. You just want to make sure that you can see everything. Put this last one over here. And voila. So we started with just a blob of flowers, and we've turned this into a garden style asymmetrical arrangement that would look beautiful on an entry table or a small dining table. Very versatile, and this type of design can be created using anything you can find at the grocery store. So here we go. So make sure to leave your email address so that we can pick the one to win. We're not going to pick, we're going to draw to win this toolkit. And if you have any questions, please let us know. My website for the Tallest Tulip is thetallesttulip.com. We're actually launching a rebrand on Wednesday, so we're getting a facelift and a new look I'm really excited about. So if you check us out after Wednesday, you'll see all of the new stuff. Or you can always email us at info@thetallesttulip.com with questions. We do weddings and events, so we'd be happy to consult with anyone for flowers for their wedding or event. We do a small amount of local retail arrangements here in the Missouri City, Sugar Land area. And then we also do workshops. So check us out, send us an email, and thank you for watching.